Hello, welcome back to the Life Atelier podcast. I'm your host, Emma Lavelle. If this is the first time that you are listening to or watching the podcast, because I post these videos on YouTube as well. And this is our first episode in ages, absolutely ages. And there was a very active decision, which was very uncomfortable, where I decided to just drop it, stop recording the podcast to prioritize other things, delivering life stuff, playing around on Instagram. And really I wanted to share that just to be the example of if you are trying to balance lots of things at the moment, whether it's in your business or in your life, and you're keeping all of them because you are worried what people will think or what people will say. Use me as the example of the person that, yeah, I drop stuff quite often and then I pick them up again. Okay. So I had the podcast in mind for ages. I've just come back from New York. And as I was on the flight over there and on the flight coming back, I was like, I missed the podcast. I missed the podcast. And then today just felt like the perfect day to restart it because we are doing the Future Self Journaling Challenge. And that is going to be in the Life Atelier starting on Monday. And again, I was going to start that today, the 1st of August, but this week it has been 38 degrees in Toulouse. It has been hot. I had jet lag, all of these different things. And I just thought, okay, let's recalibrate, right? And again, I want to be that example for you of you can recalibrate. Like literally, if you watch on the video, I'm like holding my dress open because it's really hot. And I just thought, let's recalibrate, right? Let's do this in a time that feels good, in a spacious way. We are going to be doing it for 3 weeks. So we're actually, here's Rita, if you're watching the video. Rita's still very much, yeah, alive and well, chasing flies behind me. So we're going to start this on Monday. And I was only going to do it for my coaching clients and our members, but I thought, let's do the first week for free so that everybody can join. Okay. So if you've been thinking like, okay, this sounds interesting, but I'm not sure about it, I'm going to put a link for you to sign up. There will be a pop-up Facebook group so you can join. And essentially, we're going to go live. Well, I'll go live. You don't have to go live. I'll go live. I'll also email out a Zoom link. And we'll do 15 minutes each day. So it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, because Wednesday, as you know, is not actually a working day in my book. Wednesday is do whatever the fuck you like day. Okay. So with that, I wanted to introduce you to the future self concept, right? So there's going to be a Notion document. I'll probably share it. I'll make it available for next week so that you can use it. And the idea is that you can dig into this concept of your future self and who that is, so that when we start on Monday, you can just jump in and do these like 15-minute exercises. Okay. So maybe I'll share the screen. Let's start with not sharing the screen. So essentially, there's this idea with the future self of it's all about being able to connect with the version of you who has already achieved your goals and to use that to solve problems. Now, you might be thinking like, how do I do that? Like, I haven't actually solved those problems. I haven't actually achieved my goals already. And that's completely normal. That's definitely something. No, I'm going to share the screen because otherwise I'm going to be like looking backwards and forwards. Also, I suspect that Rita is going to possibly jump into Zoom. This is definitely a possibility. Let's see if I can do a split screen. No. Okay, all good. If you're watching the video, I'm still here. I'm just small and in the top right. Okay, so this is what you'll see on your Notion document, okay? And this is something that I'm still updating, I'm still tweaking as people are using it. As you know, we had a coaching session today where I added a couple of things that I didn't have before, but at least you can get an overview of it. And at least you can start to think about, okay, how could this be useful? No, I can't get it working. Okay, so this Notion is about using the future self concept to plan the day. As I mentioned, we want to connect with our future selves because we can then get this different energy of taking decisions as the version of us who has already achieved these shifts in how we're thinking and how we're solving problems. So what I like to do is map it out literally like this. So you'll see that I've got on here your future self exercise. I put 15 minutes. You could put 10, you could put 5. It's something I used to do when I first started doing time hacking, and I would put the time for each thing so that I could really train my brain to like finish at a certain point. I don't necessarily do it so much now. I tend to work in like specific blocks. I've also got here your flow and glow working sprints. So this is with the idea of you've got a morning or an afternoon of work and you really have a specific goal in mind. Now, this we've added today is your Starlight Focus and your values. So when we're thinking about how we're setting our goal for the day or for the next task, we usually want to link it to like the big goal, the big thing that we're aiming for. So that might be, applying for a job, or or not applying for a job, it might be getting a job, right? Or starting your business or transitioning your business, or it might be finding a relationship, or it might be changing the relationship that you're in and, getting the spark back or whatever it is. Okay. So we've got our Starlight Focus. This is the thing that I've taken this from Johan Hari's book, Stolen Focus. And this is it's like our thing that we look up in the sky and we're like, oh yeah, that's the big thing. Okay. So you can add that in here. If you don't know what that is, I'll do a podcast on that about how to like identify what your main focus is. And then we've also added your values. And I just think it's really nice to have your values in one spot so that you can do a quick check-in with, okay, is my Starlight Focus? So if you think about the Starlight Focus is like the end destination, the guiding point, and then your values are like the compass for how you're getting there. So is my overall focus connected with my values? And again, these are just optional tools. You don't have to use them. You can have them, don't have them. You can start to adapt this Notion document so that it works for you once you've got it. The next step that I would take before going through this for the very first time, and definitely day to day, I use these tools and they just take a second, right? Because this will take a couple of minutes to go through the first time. But afterwards, when you're doing these like 15-minute journal prompts and when you're just working in like 45-minute sections or chunks or whatever you want to call them, you might just do this in a second. But we want to do a body check-in before we do any kind of problem solving or thought work or exploration, because we want to check that all of our thinking systems are online. Remember that if you are experiencing any kind of anxiety or fear, then your energy is going towards your fight or flight system. It is not going towards your problem solving system, which means we're not seeing all of the options. So body checking is very simple. You can just put your hand on your heart, your other hand on your stomach. And I was explaining to our call this morning, I also take this opportunity to say, love you, stomach, because I used to have hated my stomach, and I decided that I'm going to love my stomach, right? So if you have any kind of not being best friends with your body, this can be a really nice moment to just check in and say, hey, thanks as well. Okay. Little by little, learn to love them again. And then take a deep breath in. And then a deep breath out. And you can just ask yourself here, okay, how am I feeling? And if you don't have like one word to give you the emotion, you can describe like, okay, my heart is beating quickly. My stomach feels uncomfortable, it's fluttering. My shoulders feel tight. Or it might be, okay, my jaw is relaxed. That's interesting. Usually I'm clenching it, right? Or it might be, I notice I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired. Okay. If you are not feeling good in your body or you don't feel connected to it, a really great question to ask at this point is, what does your body want you to know? And again, you can just close your eyes and say, okay, what do you want me to know? And usually what will come up is something very simple, and it will be, I'm hungry. I don't want more caffeine. I'm tired. I need to go outside. Something mine used to offer me was, I need silence, right? If I was overwhelmed, it was just, I need silence. And so this next question then, do you want to do anything to change how you feel? or how your energy level is before we start, that might be the point where you decide, you know what, I feel quite stressed out, or I feel thirsty, or I do feel exhausted. I'm going to have a 20-minute nap, or I'm going to go and get a glass of water. I'm going to do a bit of breath work before I start to do this. And you can just make these little tweaks so that when you do start to do this thinking exercise, you've got all of your focus and all of your capacity available, which just makes it so much easier. And then the next two questions, how is your energy level? Now, I like to ask this question because for me, this is something that I know that I can tweak it quite easily with music. Or if I notice that my energy level is like a bit scattered and I'm all over the place, I've got like a YouTube video of smooth brown noise. So I'll put something to help me to focus, right? If my energy is like very, okay, or I'll put an energizing song on, or I'll just do some physical movement, or I'll do again like breath work, and I'll just think about what I want to do here. And then the final question, at the end of this, I want to feel. Now, I like to ask that question because it's a way for me to check in. When you do your evaluation at the end, you can come back to the start and say, okay, did I end up creating that feeling? If I didn't, why not? And is it a problem? Right? Did I actually not need to feel that way? Was I still able to do the activity without feeling that? And what do I want to do next time? So they're just these like little questions where we can check the temperature, we can check the direction, we can check these things as we go. So let's jump into your future self exercise. Now, you probably only need to do this the once, and then you're just going to start updating it and adding to it, right? But the reason we want to, I did start to say this earlier, and then I got distracted. The reason we want to do our future self, the future self exercise and connect with our future self is because most people are describing themselves as they are now. And when we do that, we keep being the same person. Okay. So, what we want to do is start to be the person that we're imagining in the future and take decisions as them. I will dive into this, right? So, I've given you an example of when I hadn't yet created my 15-hour work week. Okay. There were a couple of differences. Me now that uses the 15-hour work week as a tool, as a way to create the lifestyle that I want to have and to connect with myself, I don't have notifications on my phone. I prioritize rest. Now, does that mean I always have perfect rest? No, but it does mean I don't judge myself when I find myself thinking the solution is to hustle. Instead, I notice, that urge is still there. Normal. I'm a human living in a world that hustles. What do I want to do about that? Okay. And then when I'm taking decisions, not judging myself, I'm getting very different results. So you can even just pause for a moment and ask yourself, even if the only change that you make is that the version of you in the future who you start to embody now doesn't judge themselves, right? What difference would that make? How would your outcomes change? How would you feel differently day to day? So now you'll see you've got some exercises about you deciding who you are now. And I just want to highlight one or 2 points from this. You can go through them yourself. But the first is just to say, I've said this many times, I'm going to come back from the shared screen, is that you are a human. And as a human, you have the full scale of being human, right? You can be selfish, you can be brave, you can be generous, you can be happy, you can experience joy, you can experience grief, you can experience like all of these things, right? That is what being a human is. Just the way the example I always use is like Rita. Rita is a dog. All dogs, I think, have this capacity for an amazing sense of smell, right? And I remember I've talked about it on the podcast before, but when Rita was really, really sick and she wasn't allowed water for about 3 or 4 days. And so she was going around the house like a bloodhound, and she was finding she was sniffing out anywhere that there was water. And there was one point where she was sniffing the window ledge in the kitchen. And I was thinking, what the hell is this? And I found a tiny yogurt pot that had water that I put out for a bird, and she had smelt that water. Now, before she had water removed from easy access, she didn't need to use that part of her body, of her physiology, right? She didn't need it. But when she did need it, it was there and she activated it, right? So if you're thinking like, oh, well, I couldn't be decisive, or oh, I couldn't be someone who sets boundaries, or I can't be someone who takes risks. You can, because you're a human. Okay. So I want you to just zoom out of thinking that you're uniquely struggling with certain things and just start to experiment with, I am a human. Because I am a human, I have this full range of potential skills, right? They're all there inside me. It's just maybe they're dormant or they haven't been used as much, okay? But they are absolutely there. Now, the second thing that we want to do is notice that when we are describing ourselves in negative ways, is to interrupt that and to ask ourselves, how is that not true, right? If you notice that you describe yourself as lazy, find that one example where you can say, oh, actually, I move in that situation, right? I am absolutely not lazy. And it might be you love Glastonbury, and when the Glastonbury tickets go on sale, you are up at 5 a.m., you're refreshing on the screen. I don't know if that's still relevant in 2024, but it used to be. Okay, so there are some questions there where you can ask yourself, how did you used to describe yourself? And then ask, is this helpful? Right? If you describe yourself as a procrastinator, but you want to change the direction of your business, is it helping your goal to keep describing yourself as a procrastinator? Right? If you describe yourself as someone that has an awful experience dating, but you want to fall in love, is it useful to keep saying, like, oh, I'm really bad at dating? Right? Is that going to help you to get the result that you want? And if it isn't, you can drop it. Okay. And we can now pick a new way. And a really easy one, like I used it when I first started dating, was like, I am someone that has fun when they're dating. Like, I will always find a good story out of this. I will, even if it's like a disaster on paper, I will have some excellent stories for when I meet my friends for a coffee. Okay. Now, as you're writing those things, something that can be really helpful is to notice what comes up in your brain as potential obstacles. So, something that came up on the call today was like overthinking, and the idea that taking decisions as your future self might take a lot of energy or time. So, the easiest solution is to say, oh, okay, so present me thinks that this will cost energy and time. Therefore, my future self is decisive, right? And my future self makes these things easy. So now let's put this in the present tense. I am decisive. I find it easy to do this exercise. I love working with my future self. And just sit with those, practice saying them, and see what comes up for you after that. I also like to put the list somewhere. That's why I said you might just want to do this the once, and then after that, kind of update it. It's something that I use when I'm coming up against obstacles during the day. So again, like if, as I mentioned, if I notice that I want to set my alarm for 6 a.m. and I do it and I don't feel good and I snooze, rather than judging myself like, oh, you set it for 6 and you snooze, the first thing I'll do is think like, oh, let's update that. I don't set my alarm before 7 because I don't want to set myself up to fail, right? I love to start the day setting myself up for success. Therefore, I set my alarm for a time where I'm not going to snooze because I'm already going to be awake. Okay. So we can really like update it as you're going, right? Now, the other thing that I like to do here is to name the part of yourself that you want to flourish. And again, if you think about that full spectrum of potential, you know, if you can have like one word or one name that you connect with and you feel like, oh, yes, like that's me, definitely, then that's going to make it much easier to connect with your future self. Something that I did was I started to use like Emma Dominique decisions, because when I was a kid, my parents would use Emma Dominique when I was in trouble. And I realized that a part of myself that I had really suppressed was like this rebellious stuff. I mean, I hadn't, because I still did quite a lot of bad things, but I felt guilty about them. Now, Emma in the future, Emma who she doesn't people please, she does what she wants to do, she takes risks, she's independent, she's focused on all these things. She uses that rebellious side and that anti-establishment side to fuel herself. So it was as easy as saying like, okay, let's make an Emma Dominique decision, right? Some of the other things that my friends, well, you are friends as well, my clients have used is like entrepreneur Anna, okay? Or like luxurious self-care Emma, okay? Or rebel Rita, right? So just play around and you'll know you've got the right one when you feel it in your body, right? When you get that feeling of like, oh, yes, that definitely feels good, okay? So we've got now the questions that we're going to be asking you during the day, okay? And this is going to be about planning, and it's about the result that you want at the end of the day connected to that starlight focus, okay? And so the first thing you'll do is just spend a few moments connecting to your future self, then visioning the result that you have at the end of the day, and then listing all of the decisions that you need to take around that end goal. This is a tool that we use inside the Life Atelier. It's a tool that I use with my one-to-one clients. And really just thinking about, okay, ahead of me is a series of decisions. And if I can take those decisions now, including when I fail, when I get rejected, what will I do? Okay, what are my decisions about that? Am I going to feel sorry for myself or am I going to look after myself? How will I speak to myself when XYZ happens, right? And that's it. That then sets up your plan for the day as your future self. Again, we want to just quickly visit that and say, okay, have I given my future self too many things to do? Am I setting them up for success or setting them up to fail, right? And you only need to just look at what was your experience yesterday or what's your experience today, how are your energy levels, because they're the result of what past you did, okay? And then finally, at the bottom of the document, you will see some evaluation questions. Don't skip this, right? As we're evolving our future self work, we really want to be evaluating. This is something I'll actually put it in my calendar because my brain will skip over the evaluation. I've got very good at evaluating in the moment, but actually pausing to evaluate the whole day, that still costs a bit more energy. So again, no judgment. Right now, it helps me to put that in the calendar, okay? And that is a way to support myself. So gorgeous, beautiful, lovely people. I am so glad that we're back posting this podcast on a Thursday, not the day I meant to post the podcast, but I want to get it out to you because I want to invite you to join us on Monday, whether you are a member or not, to do the first week of the live journaling challenge.